The invitation drops from Amara's trembling hands, fluttering to the polished marble floor of her penthouse office. Her ex-husband David and his mistress Jessica are requesting her presence at their engagement dinner. At the very hotel her company owns. 6 months pregnant with his child, standing in the office suite he never knew existed, surrounded by the empire he never bothered to ask about, she finally understands the depth of their ignorance. They never knew who she really was. They never even thought to ask. Before we continue, let me ask you something quietly. Where are you listening from right now? And what time is it in your part of the world? Some of us are hearing this story under the hot afternoon sun. Some in the calm of the night, when thoughts are heavy and hearts are open. Different places, one story, one lesson. If stories like this speak to your heart, please subscribe to the channel. Your like helps this story reach another soul. Your comment tells me you understand the lesson. And when you share, you may be saving someone from the same mistake. Now let us continue. Amara Okafor stared at the cream-colored invitation on her mahogany desk, her hands instinctively moving to her rounded belly where her son kicked gently, as if responding to her distress. The elegant calligraphy mocked her with its beauty. David Mensah and Jessica Adeyemi request the pleasure of your company at their engagement celebration. Her private office on the 20th floor of the TechVault Solutions building overlooked all of Lagos. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see Victoria Island stretching toward the Atlantic, the city pulsing with evening traffic, millions of lives intersecting below. For 3 years of marriage, David believed she was unemployed, perhaps volunteering at some charity, certainly dependent on his salary as a senior project manager. He never knew that every morning when she kissed him goodbye and left for volunteer work, she was actually running the empire her late father had built from nothing. TechVault Solutions, the company where David worked so proudly, wore his badge with such satisfaction, discussed his projects with such importance. It was all hers. The shopping malls where they occasionally browsed, the hotels where they celebrated anniversaries, the technology investments he read about in business magazines, all hers. Why hide it, Amara? Her mother Ruth had asked when Amara first met David at a mutual friend's wedding 5 years ago. You're a wealthy woman. Any man would be blessed to know you. That's exactly why, Mama. I want to know if he loves me. Just me. Not my money, not my status, not what I can provide. I want to know if David Mensah will love Amara Okafor when he thinks she has nothing to offer but herself. Ruth had studied her daughter's face, seeing the loneliness that wealth had created. The isolation of never knowing if affection was genuine. She'd nodded slowly, understanding but worried. Be careful, my daughter. Some tests break what they're meant to prove. Some questions destroy the answer by being asked. Those words haunted Amara now, echoing through the empty spaces of her luxurious office. She remembered David's complaints to his friends, overheard during a dinner party at his colleague's house 6 months into their marriage. She'd gone to the kitchen for more drinks and heard his voice through the thin walls. I'm tired, honestly, David had said, his frustration clear. I'm tired of supporting a woman who does nothing all day. My father keeps telling me to be patient, that wives need time to find themselves, but what am I waiting for? She volunteers. While I work 60-hour weeks to pay our rent, buy our food, maintain our lifestyle. His friend had murmured something sympathetic. David had continued. Jessica at work, now she's going places. Project proposals, client presentations, networking events. That's what a modern woman looks like. Not someone sitting at home waiting for her husband to provide everything. Amara had stood in that kitchen, her hand pressed against her mouth to silence her gasp, and felt something crack inside her chest. She was 6 months pregnant with news she'd been preparing to share that very evening. A small gift box with a positive pregnancy test wrapped in blue paper sitting in her purse. She'd left the party early, claiming a headache. The gift box remained in her purse, unopened, unwanted. The divorce papers came the following week. I need someone independent, Amara, David had said, standing in their living room, unable to meet her eyes. His bags were already packed. Someone with ambition, with drive. Jessica understands my career. She has goals. She's going places. You're stuck. You're sweet, you're kind, but you're not growing. I can't carry both of us anymore. Amara had signed the papers in silence, her pregnancy still a secret growing inside her, her fortune an empire he'd never discovered. She watched him pack the last of his belongings from their shared closet, watched him load his car with boxes of books and clothes, watched him drive away toward the woman who mocked his useless ex-wife in the company cafeteria. The company Amara owned, the cafeteria where she'd installed security cameras for exactly these reasons. That night, alone in the apartment they'd shared, sitting in the nursery she'd secretly begun preparing, Amara made a decision. She would let him go. She would raise this child alone. And one day, when the time was right, when they'd built their happiness on the foundation of his contempt for her, David would learn the truth about the woman he'd called stuck. Some lessons, her mother had taught her during her own grief after losing her husband, must be learned through consequence. Some people only understand value after they've thrown it away. 3 months after the divorce, David's life seemed to sparkle with perfection. He appeared at every company event with Jessica on his arm, her laughter loud and confident, her hand possessive on his shoulder. She was everything he thought Amara wasn't. Ambitious, polished, financially independent, unafraid to speak her mind in meetings. "You're so lucky you escaped that marriage," Jessica told him during a company cocktail hour, her voice carrying across the rooftop venue. "Imagine being trapped with someone so uninspiring. You deserve someone who matches your energy." David had smiled, pushing down the small voice that reminded him of Amara's quiet strength, her gentle wisdom, the way she'd listened to his dreams even when he never asked about hers. In the executive boardroom that David had never been invited to, that existed 3 floors above his own office in a section requiring special elevator access, Amara reviewed quarterly reports with her senior management team. Her trusted managing director, Kenneth Adebayo, pointed to David's performance file. "His numbers are excellent, Mrs. Okafor. Project completion rate at 97%. Client satisfaction scores highest in his division. The promotion to Senior Director of Operations. Should I proceed with approval?" Amara studied her ex-husband's professional photo on the personnel file. 3 years of marriage, and he never once asked about her day, her dreams, her past. He'd mentioned once that she never talked about her family, and when she gently said her father had passed and it was painful to discuss, he'd nodded and changed the subject to his own work challenges. He never asked again. He'd assumed poverty, dependency, aimlessness, and accepted it all as truth without question. "Approve it," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the baby moving inside her. "He earned it through his performance. Personal matters don't interfere with professional merit." Kenneth hesitated, his loyalty to her evident in his concern. "Ma'am, given the circumstances, given what business and personal matters are separate, Kenneth. That's why this company succeeds. He doesn't know I exist in this capacity. We'll keep it that way until the appropriate time." But Jessica certainly knew Amara existed, as David's pathetic, discarded ex-wife. In the marketing department on the 15th floor, Jessica's voice often carried across cubicles during lunch breaks, her contempt unconcealed. "Can you imagine being so useless your own husband divorces you?" she'd said just last week to a group of colleagues. "I heard she's pregnant too. Probably trying to trap him with a baby. Some women have no dignity. David told me she did nothing all day. Nothing. Just waited for him to come home and provide for her like it was 1950. The other employees had shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. They knew something Jessica didn't. Their CEO's identity was carefully guarded, but whispers existed in every organization. The mysterious Mrs. Okafor who approved everything, whose vision drove company strategy, but who appeared nowhere, whose face remained unknown to most employees. Some of them had theories. Some had noticed things, like how their CEO's maternity leave policy had been enhanced exactly 3 months ago, or how the company's childcare benefits had suddenly expanded. Amara's pregnancy progressed into its 6th month. Her belly was undeniable now, round and full with the son she already loved fiercely. She worked from home more often, attended board meetings virtually from her apartment, and trusted her team to maintain her anonymity. Her doctor appointments, her nursery preparation, her quiet conversations with her growing child, these were hers alone. Then came the evening her mother Ruth visited, worry creasing her still beautiful face, age showing in ways that grief over losing a husband and watching a daughter suffer had accelerated. "David's father came to see me today," Ruth said, settling into Amara's living room, accepting the herbal tea her daughter prepared. Samuel is begging you to reconsider the divorce. For the baby's sake, he says. The Mensah family wants to be involved. The baby David doesn't know exists? Amara's voice was bitter, her hand protective on her belly. The baby he created with a wife he called a burden before abandoning her? He's family, Amara. Whatever David did, Samuel is still the grandfather. The Mensah family wanted David to divorce me, Mama. Don't you remember? Samuel told David I wasn't ambitious enough, that a man of his caliber needed a wife who contributed financially. His mother suggested David was too young to be trapped by family expectations. Now they want access to their grandchild. Amara shook her head, tears threatening. Tell Samuel his son made his choice. He wanted an independent woman. He has one. Just not the one he thinks. Not the one he deserves. Ruth touched her daughter's hand, feeling the tremor of suppressed emotion. Secrets always surface, my child. The truth is like pregnancy. It can be hidden for a time, but eventually it must be born. When the truth comes out, what will you do? How will you face them? Amara met her mother's eyes, and Ruth saw steel there, forged in betrayal and tempered by months of silent suffering. I'll do what he never did, Mama. I'll tell the truth. All of it. And I'll let the consequences speak for themselves. 1 week later, the invitation arrived at her office address. The address David never knew existed, on the 20th floor he'd never accessed, delivered by the receptionist who knew exactly who Mrs. Okafor was. Inside the elegant envelope, Jessica's handwriting adorned a small note tucked into the engagement card. Come see what a real woman looks like. See what David chose instead of you. Amara read it twice, feeling something cold and final settle in her chest. She picked up her phone, her decision made. Kenneth, prepare the ownership documents. All of them. Company registration, board minutes, asset portfolios, employment contracts, everything. It's time David and Jessica learned who really runs TechVault Solutions. It's time they learned what a real woman looks like. The Grandeur Hotel glittered with celebration, every surface reflecting light from crystal chandeliers that Amara had personally selected during the renovation 3 years ago. David had spared no expense for this evening, or so he thought. He didn't know that every naira he'd spent on this venue, every drink served, every flower arranged, enriched Amara's accounts. The hotel belonged to her holding company, purchased the same year they'd married. Amara arrived 30 minutes into the reception, fashionably late, her presence immediately drawing attention like a stone dropped into still water. 6 months pregnant, draped in an elegant navy dress that cost more than David's monthly salary, she moved through the crowd with quiet dignity, her head high, her mother Ruth beside her as witness and support. David saw her first. His champagne glass froze halfway to his lips, his conversation with a colleague dying mid-sentence. Amara? What are you? His eyes dropped to her belly, obvious now, undeniable, and the color drained from his face. You're pregnant. Jessica appeared at his side instantly, her smile venomous, her designer dress, purchased with her TechVault Solutions salary, tight and commanding. Did you come to beg, Amara? Some women truly have no shame. Showing up pregnant to your ex-husband's engagement? How desperate can you be? Guests whispered, phones discreetly raised to capture the drama. David's father Samuel looked stricken, his wife clutching his arm. Ruth stood near the entrance, watching her daughter with pride and pain mixed equally on her face. The baby is 6 months along, Amara said calmly, her voice cutting through the whispers, meeting David's shocked eyes with unflinching directness. Conceived before you filed for divorce. But you left before I could tell you. You were too busy planning your future with someone else. David's mouth opened, closed, his mind visibly racing through calculations, dates, that last month of their marriage when he'd been so distant, so cold. Jessica laughed sharply, the sound brittle and harsh. How convenient. Trying to guilt-trip him with a baby? How manipulative. David, call security and have her removed. That won't be necessary, Ms. Adeyemi. The hotel manager, Michael Ogunlisi, approached with swift professionalism, his face carefully neutral. Mrs. Okafor, we didn't realize you'd be attending this evening. Shall I prepare the executive suite for your meeting? We can have the documents and refreshments brought up immediately. Jessica frowned, her confident smile faltering. Mrs. Okafor? What meeting? Michael, there's been some confusion. The manager blinked, genuinely confused now, looking between Jessica and Amara. I'm sorry, Ms. Adeyemi, but Mrs. Okafor is the chairman of the board of Okafor Holdings, which owns this hotel and several other properties. She owns. There's been a mistake, Jessica interrupted, still smiling but with edges of panic creeping into her voice. This is Amara, David's unemployed ex-wife. She's confused or lying or… I'm not confused, Jessica, Amara said quietly. And I don't lie. Michael is correct. Could you arrange a private room? The ambassador suite, I think. I need to speak with Mr. Mensah, Ms. Adeyemi, and both families. My lawyer will join us shortly. He's bringing documents. The color began draining from Jessica's face, her champagne glass trembling in her hand. David stood frozen, his mind racing through impossible calculations, memories of Amara leaving each morning, of never asking where she went, of assuming, always assuming. In the private ambassador suite, the hotel's finest conference room with a view of Lagos Harbor, Amara's lawyer, Chidi Nwankwo, laid documents across the massive mahogany table with methodical precision. Ownership certificates, board meeting minutes, financial statements showing assets in the hundreds of millions, personnel files including David's and Jessica's employment contracts, both signed at the bottom by A. Okafor, CEO. TechVault Solutions, Amara began, her voice steady despite her racing heart, her hand resting on her belly where her son kicked as if encouraging her, was founded by my father, Richard Okafor, 30 years ago. He built it from a single office in Ikeja to a Pan-African technology leader. When he passed 5 years ago, I inherited controlling interest 73% of shares. I expanded into hospitality, real estate, technology consulting, and venture capital. She gestured to the documents spread before them like evidence in a trial. David, you work for me. You always have. Every promotion, every salary increase, every company benefit, I approve them. This hotel is mine. The venue where you planned your future belongs to the woman you called stuck. David's hands trembled as he picked up his own employment contract, seeing for the first time the signature at the bottom, the one he'd never looked at carefully. Okafor, CEO. Not some distant executive he'd never meet. His wife. His ex-wife. This is impossible. Jessica's voice cracked, her confident facade crumbling. You're lying. This is some kind of revenge plot. Every promotion David received, Amara continued, ignoring Jessica's outburst, her eyes only on David now, I approved. Not because you were my husband but because you earned them. Every company event you both attended I funded. Every paycheck you earned came from accounts I control. Every benefit, every bonus, every opportunity. Mine to give or take away. She turned finally to Jessica, her voice dropping to something colder. Including the salary you used to mock me in the cafeteria. Yes, Jessica, I know what you said. HR reports everything to me. We have security footage of 17 separate incidents where you created a hostile work environment. I was waiting for the right time to act. Samuel Mensah buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Ruth stood beside her daughter, silent support radiating from her presence. You wanted an independent woman, David, Amara said quietly, the final blow delivered with surgical precision. You were married to one. You just never respected me enough to ask who I was. You saw a quiet wife and assumed poverty. You saw humility and assumed weakness. You saw patience and assumed I had nothing better to do. The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by Jessica's ragged breathing and Samuel's suppressed sobs. David collapsed into a chair, his legs no longer supporting him, realization hitting him like a physical blow. Everything he'd thought about his life, his marriage, his choices, all of it built on assumptions he'd never questioned, arrogance he'd never examined. I loved you, Amara whispered. And for the first time her voice broke. I loved you enough to hide everything just to know if you'd love me for myself. And you failed. You failed so completely that you threw me away for someone who worked for me. The days following the revelation shattered David's world like glass dropped from a great height, each piece cutting as it fell. He called Amara 17 times that first night, his voicemails progressing from shock to desperation to incoherent apology. She blocked his number after listening to the first 3. He appeared at her apartment building the next morning, only to be turned away by security employed by her property management company, informed of the situation, protective of their employer. "Mrs. Okafor has made it clear she doesn't wish to see you, sir," the head of security had said, not unkindly but firmly. "Please don't make this difficult." At TechVault Solutions, the atmosphere shifted like weather before a storm. Employees who once congratulated David on his promotion now avoided eye contact in hallways. Conversations died when he entered rooms. The company-wide email announcing Jessica Adeyemi's immediate termination arrived 3 days after the engagement party. Effective immediately, Ms. Jessica Adeyemi's employment has been terminated due to multiple documented violations of our workplace conduct policy. The email read, "Professionally neutral but devastating. TechVault Solutions maintains a zero-tolerance policy for harassment and discrimination." David was called to Kenneth's office that afternoon. His managing director, his boss, sat behind a desk with documents spread before him. "She created a hostile work environment," Kenneth explained, his voice carefully neutral. "We have testimonies from 6 employees dating back 8 months. Video footage from common areas. Documentation of complaints that were held pending further action." He paused meaningfully. "Mrs. Okafor has been patient, but her patience has limits, especially regarding employees who mock pregnant women." David sat in silence, understanding clicking into place. Amara had known. For months she'd known what Jessica said, what Jessica did, and she'd waited for this exact moment. "And my position?" David asked, his voice hollow. "Your performance remains exemplary. Your employment continues." Kenneth met his eyes. "Mrs. Okafor insists on separating personal and professional matters. You keep your job, David. You'll work here every day, under her authority, earning the salary she approves. That's her decision." The cruelty of it was perfect. She wasn't punishing him by firing him. She was punishing him by letting him stay, by making him face what he'd lost every single day. Jessica blamed David for everything. Their relationship shattered in a screaming match outside his apartment 2 weeks after the revelation, neighbors watching from windows. "You ruined my life," she shouted, makeup running, designer heels kicked off in rage. "You told me she was nothing. You said she was useless, dependent, pathetic. And now I've lost everything because I believed you. I didn't know. You didn't care to know. What kind of husband doesn't know his own wife? What kind of man lives with someone for 3 years and never asks a single meaningful question?" Jessica's laughter was hysterical, edged with tears and fury. "I mocked her. I humiliated her. I destroyed my own career mocking my boss. And you let me. You encouraged me." She left that night, her car packed with belongings. David heard later through mutual acquaintances that she'd moved to Port Harcourt, her promising Lagos career destroyed, her reputation unsalvageable. No company would touch her after word spread about why TechVault Solutions had terminated her. David's family suffered the social consequences too. At church, at family gatherings in the neighborhood, everyone knew. Samuel Mensah, once proud of his successful son, couldn't meet his friend's eyes at the men's fellowship. "Your son had a treasure and treated it like trash," one elder had said, loud enough for others to hear. "Because he was too blind to see value when it didn't announce itself." When Amara gave birth to Emmanuel Chukwuebuka Okafor, "God is with us, God is great," David learned about it through a text message from his mother 3 days after the birth. She'd been there in the delivery room. Samuel had been allowed to visit the hospital. David hadn't been informed until it was over. He tried sending gifts to the hospital. They were returned unopened. He wrote letters. They went unanswered. He sent flowers. They were donated to other patients. His promotion to senior director was quietly rescinded 2 months after Emmanuel's birth. "Restructuring," Kenneth explained during a tense meeting, though they both knew the truth. "Conflict of interest concerns. You'll maintain your current position and salary." Many would consider that generous given the circumstances. David would work at TechVault Solutions, earn his salary, and live every day with what he'd thrown away. Every company newsletter featuring Emmanuel's milestones, his first smile, his christening, his mother's return to work, would be a reminder. Every executive email signed by A. Okafor would be a knife twist. One afternoon, 3 months after Emmanuel's birth, David's mother visited Amara at her home. carrying David's latest letter in her handbag, tears already forming before she spoke. "He wants to know his son," she said, her voice breaking. "Amara, I'm begging as a grandmother. He's destroyed, broken. He hasn't slept properly in months. He's lost weight. He knows what he did. He knows." Ruth was there, sitting beside her daughter on the couch as Amara nursed Emmanuel, the baby's tiny hand wrapped around his mother's finger. She was the one who answered, delivering the message Amara had carefully prepared. "Tell David what my daughter told me to say. You didn't love me when you thought I had nothing. I won't accept you now that you know I have everything. You loved an illusion, the idea of an accomplished woman on your arm. You destroyed the reality, a woman who would have given you everything without you asking. You saw weakness where there was strength, dependence where there was independence, and now you want what you threw away. But some things, once discarded, cannot be reclaimed." David's mother wept. Ruth held Emmanuel closer. Amara stared out the window, her face unreadable, her heart protected by walls David had forced her to build. 1 year later, Lagos hummed with its usual chaos, but some lives had found unexpected peace while others remained broken. Amara's empire flourished. TechVault Solutions expanded into 3 new African markets. The business magazines that once featured her father now profiled her, though she granted few interviews and fewer photographs. She preferred privacy, especially for Emmanuel. Her son grew strong and healthy, surrounded by love from his grandmother, his mother's trusted team, and the community that had watched Amara suffer and now celebrated her strength. David still worked at TechVault Solutions. Amara refused to fire him, not out of mercy but out of justice. "Let him work for what he threw away," she told Kenneth. "Every day let him remember." And he did remember. Every quarterly meeting where executives mentioned Mrs. Okafor's vision, David felt the knife twist. Every company newsletter featuring Emmanuel's milestones, his first steps, his first birthday, reminded David of the family he'd abandoned. Emmanuel's first birthday party was held at the Grandeur Hotel, the same venue where David's engagement had imploded. The guest list included business partners, family friends, and the employees who'd watched Amara's grace under pressure. David wasn't invited. He heard about it anyway. The entire company received commemorative gift baskets, each one bearing Emmanuel's photo and Amara's grateful message to her TechVault family. In social circles, David's name became a cautionary tale. The fool who divorced his fortune, they called him, though the more perceptive knew the real tragedy wasn't the money. It was the woman of character he'd failed to see. Jessica disappeared from their lives entirely, her promising career reduced to a struggling consultancy in another city. The last David heard, she refused to speak his name. At a family gathering for Emmanuel's dedication ceremony, Samuel Mensah approached Amara publicly, his voice breaking. "I pushed my son to marry you because I saw your character," he said before everyone. "Then I pushed him to stay married because I knew he was wrong to leave. But I never truly apologized to you, Amara, for my family's failure to see your worth." He bowed his head. "Forgive an old man who values tradition but forgot wisdom." Amara's response was gracious but firm. "I forgive you, sir. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Emmanuel will know his grandfather. But his father." She paused, meeting David's eyes across the room. "His father is someone he'll learn about, not learn from." The final scene played out months later, outside TechVault Solutions headquarters. David was leaving work when he saw them. Amara walking with Emmanuel on her hip, greeting employees who loved and respected her. Her mother beside her. Her lawyer-turned-friend Kenneth laughing at something she said. Emmanuel giggled at the city lights. Amara kissed his forehead, whispering something that made the baby laugh. She never looked David's way. She didn't need to. He was invisible to her now, as invisible as she'd been to him when it mattered. That night, alone in his apartment, David finally understood what he'd lost. Not the money, though that stung. Not the status, though that hurt. He'd lost the woman who'd loved him enough to hide her fortune just to know if he'd love her back. He'd failed the test he never knew he was taking. Ruth's words echoed through the family, through the community, through everyone who knew their story. A woman's worth isn't in her bank account, but in her character. Your mistake wasn't failing to see her money. It was failing to see her value. Amara never spoke to David again. Emmanuel grew up knowing his mother's strength and his father's regret. Some betrayals cost everything. Some consequences last forever. Some tests once failed can never be retaken.